Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
If it hasn't become abundantly clear to the American public by now, we are heading into some really uncertain times for journalism in the United States. The Paramount CBS capitulation on behalf of 60 Minutes, the firing of Stephen Colbert, ending the entire Late Show franchise just to placate the sitting president of the United States, obviously, so that the sale of Paramount to new ownership can be rubber stamped by his regulators, is troubling. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm sitting back and watching now as we wait to see what becomes of Rupert Murdoch suddenly growing a pair and his Wall Street Journal just sort of dipping new little stories about Trump and Epstein out in drips at the Wall Street Journal. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't Fox News. You're not going to see wall-to-wall headlines on Fox News about these latest two Wall Street Journal stories. The birthday card that Trump allegedly drew and typed and signed right where the pubic hair would be. That's alleged. He's, of course, threatening to file a $10 billion lawsuit. Okay. And then the latest story that the Wall Street Journal is the lead purveyor of this information, that Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi told Donald himself, "You're in the files. You're all in the files." And I don't even want to talk about the Epstein story today so much. Well, at least not now, anyway. No, I'm talking more about just where journalism as an entity in this country is today. My friend Luke the other day said to me something about being a citizen journalist. And I thought about it, and at first I bristled because I don't want somebody who is, say, a George Foreman to think he's a cop. I also don't see myself so much as a journalist. Citizen journalist, I guess. It's a label. Even that, I'm a podcaster. Okay, I'm a question asker. I'm an answer seeker. I'm a conversation haver. That doesn't really all fit on a business card, does it? I think also because I am a college dropout. Like, I didn't even get to J school. I got the radio bug. Radio took me on an adventure for 28 years. And then I found myself one day looking for an outlet. Here's a little history about the show if you don't know this. It was a post-divorce therapy session that I had. And my therapist said something along the lines of needing to find something that got me out of bed every day, come hell or high water. Being a real estate agent doesn't necessarily mean you have business ready, waiting for you to go at 8:30 every morning. So we hemmed and hawed around finding out my passions, things that truly interested me, and my background in broadcasting, and came to this conclusion. How about a podcast about politics? So voila, here we are. Back to journalism. It's become readily apparent that in the second Trump presidency, so long as Trump is at the helm, there is going to be an effort to intimidate coverage to his liking. And as long as the CBS Paramount sale, merger, etc., is going to be on the docket, it's become apparent that maybe the news we get from CBS should be set aside. And that's hard. I mean, 60 Minutes is like a Sunday staple. How many of us grew up begrudgingly as kids, right? There were 3 channels, maybe 4. And after the football games, as the family's gathering around the table to have dinner, you hear the tick, 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 tick. 60 Minutes. And whether you wanted to watch it or not as a kid, there was Mike Wallace and Morley Safer. I mean, I'm sitting here reading over the names and just memories flood. Harry Reasoner, Dan Rather, Ed Bradley, Diane Sawyer, even Meredith Vieira got her start there. Bob Simon, Christiane Amanpour, prior to her, CBS. In fact, a little bit of in a part-time role, I believe, while she was at CNN as well. Now it's Bill Whitaker and Anderson Cooper, Scott Pelley, Leslie Stahl. 60 Minutes has been a staple, right? It's something that a lot of us grew up on. And again, whether we wanted to watch it or not, it was on in the background at least, and you may have learned something. I mean, perhaps by osmosis, but still, you may have learned something. And CBS unveiled a new nightly news format. It has co-anchors. I have yet to turn it on, honestly. I'm actually more of the caught by the DVR type. I let YouTube TV capture, well, it was NBC News, and I haven't watched much of NBC News since Tom Yamas took over. I thought I had it set to continue. I guess I don't. It does capture I can more easily capture the ABC News broadcast with David Muir because in Atlanta it airs at 7 p.m. and not 6:30. That, for some reason, is just easier on my work schedule. So I've been watching a lot of ABC News lately. ABC News has been, of late anyway, pretty hard-hitting. Last night they rolled out audio that a lot of us hadn't heard before of Jeffrey Epstein, by the way, in sworn testimony, pleading the fifth and the sixth and the 14th when asked about partying with one Donald Trump back in the day. Anyway, I didn't want to talk again about the Epstein thing just yet anyway. No, I actually just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the state of journalism in this country and who do you trust and who can't you trust. And it's becoming readily apparent that the larger the corporate entity is, the less likely you can trust just getting straight facts news journalism in this country. Even at the local and, okay, I don't want to say organic, but okay, at the local level, you have to question motives. In Atlanta, for example, for more than 2 years, the building of an Atlanta public safety training facility, Cop City they called it, well, detractors called it, has been the focus of white-hot glare from activists and protesters, those who actually wanted to see it built, although you never really saw rallies for it. You didn't see rallies for the public safety training facility like you would see rallies against the Atlanta public safety training facility, Cop City. But in Atlanta, and we are fortunate, I guess, to still have a daily newspaper. A lot of markets don't anymore. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, who I, in general, think do a credible job on just about every story that they cover, still had to be sort of asterisked with that story because their parent company, Cox Enterprises, was a donor to the Atlanta Police Foundation. The Atlanta Police Foundation, the primary driver of this public safety training facility. And we could sit here and argue about the necessity of the facility or how large it was or how much money was spent on it, where it was built. Obviously, there's plenty to discuss about, and I did. I spent a lot of time on this show discussing the pros and the cons and some other measures that could have been taken to facilitate the perceived need of this training facility, along with answering skeptics, detractors, but the stubborn-headedness of Mayor Andre Dickens and the Atlanta Police Foundation have led to that facility being completed while petitions were boxed and stored in a walk-in closet at the city clerk's office, never to see the light of day for a ballot initiative to come to fruition. So no, I'm talking a little bit about journalism here because you'll not hear from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about a story that The Guardian broke. That's right, The Guardian from the United Kingdom, but also because of the dogged work of the Atlanta Community Press Collective. Have you even heard of that? I mean, outside of me talking about it on my show, have you even heard of the Atlanta Community Press Collective? This is grassroots journalism. This is a tiny entity doing the work that the paper of record in Metro Atlanta hasn't touched. The headline, this was on July 20th, and I apologize that I even hadn't gotten to this story, but I took last week off and launched an online radio station. I'm a busy guy. The headline, nearly 300 pages of Atlanta's Cop City records released after first-of-its-kind ruling. The Atlanta Police Foundation was forced to disclose a year after a lawsuit. The story reads, more than a year after a digital news outlet, Atlanta Community Press Collective, and a research group sued the Atlanta Police Foundation for allegedly violating Georgia's open records law, the foundation has sent plaintiffs nearly 300 pages of records linked to its role as the driving force behind the police training center known as Cop City. The outcome, quote, opens the door to what we want. It's a guide stone for getting records from police foundations so they can't be a black box. That, the statement of Matt Scott, executive director of the Atlanta Community Press Collective. Who's been on this show, by the way? He's good people. That is the Atlanta-based digital news outlet and one of the two plaintiffs mentioned in the case. The city can't use police foundations as a way of getting around providing public records, he said. The APF did not reply to an email from The Guardian seeking comment. ACPC and Lucy Parsons Labs, the two plaintiffs, got the records after Jane Barwick, the Fulton County Superior Court judge, concluded a bench trial by ruling that the foundation was, quote, under a duty to provide records pursuant to the Open Records Act. The lawsuit was probably the first of its kind nationwide. Robert Vargas, a sociology professor at the University of Chicago, told The Guardian last year. Although the case was centered on the Atlanta Police Foundation, observers said last year they were closely watching to see if its outcome had implications for police foundations in general and whether they might be subject to open records laws. Every major U.S. city has a private foundation supporting police, with more than 250 nationwide, according to a 2021 report by research and activist groups Little Sis and Color of Change. The foundations have been used to pay for surveillance technologies in cities like Baltimore and Los Angeles without being subject to public scrutiny, according to the report. Vargas said the ruling and the records provided, quote, sets a precedence. But he added that the results are a, quote, mixed bag, since Barwick did not offer an opinion on whether all the APF's records should be available to the public or whether police foundations in general should be considered public agencies. He said, the ruling doesn't come down hard on the bigger issue. This means police foundations could continue to assert they have a right to withhold records and invite further litigation. Now, about the APF and this specific batch of documents. The 287-page document the APF sent to plaintiffs on July 1st offers insight into how the foundation actively lobbied Atlanta City Council members to squash activist efforts to put Cop City's construction to a citywide vote on the referendum, among other issues. Let me say that again. The document the APF sent to plaintiffs on July 1st offers insight into how the foundation actively lobbied Atlanta City Council members, my elected officials, to squash activist efforts to put Cop City's construction to a citywide vote in a referendum, among other issues. Clearly, they were successful at that. We'll pick up on the story. This is The Ron Show on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Whether you consider me a citizen journalist, I don't, or just a conduit for conversation that needs to be had, The Ron Show, like a lot of these citizen-led efforts, is pretty much reliant on donors, myself being the chief donor of The Ron Show. You can participate, by the way. I want to thank Lee. Lee is always in Calvin as well, always dropping money to help The Ron Show stay on the air. And you can do that at ronshowatl.com. You can also follow The Ron Show at ronshowatl wherever you do your social media stuff. We were talking a little bit about the 287-page document dump that was court mandated after the Atlanta Community Press Collective and the Lucy Parsons Lab sought this documentation. And where we left off was the assertion from the Guardian piece that the foundation actively lobbied Atlanta City Council members to squash activist efforts to put Cop City's construction to a citywide vote in a referendum, among other issues. You'll recall there was that ballot initiative. We were all signing petitions. There were like 107, 117, I forget how many, more than 100,000 signatures on these ballots, which were never cured one way or the other. They were just packed in a box and set aside because the city, while the mayor was saying, we're confident if it's put to a vote that, we'll succeed. But they also stonewalled the referendum altogether. So he was talking out of both sides of his mouth. And by the way, the mayoral election is coming up in November. We still don't have a credible opponent against him. I'm gobsmacked by that. And I'm not sitting here saying that, he's a failing mayor or anything like that. I'm just sitting here saying, to me, he's a C+, B-, first-term mayor with plenty of open doors for folks who have issues with him to run against him, and yet we still don't have a viable candidate to run against him. We don't have options, really. And that has a lot to do with money from folks who support the Atlanta Police Foundation. He is awash in campaign cash. Who wants to run against that if you don't have it? It's daunting. Back to the Guardian piece. In a September 17th, 2023 email, Bob Baskin, an APF spokesperson, said the foundation would speak to, quote, the mayor's key folks and members of the city council about how allowing a referendum on Cop City to go before Atlanta voters, quote, would at best delay and could derail the project's financing, according to a document he attached to that email. Letting the city's residents decide on the project would, quote, almost certainly result in the loss of credibility of city council and its members, the document warns. Activists behind the referendum, quote, seek to override their elected representatives who conceived, debated, and twice overwhelmingly approved the project in full, transparent public forums, the document says. The foundation, by the way, omits that the city council meetings he refers to, in which the training center's funding was approved, included record-breaking numbers. You'll remember this, right? Atlanta residents attending in dozens of hours of public testimony against the project. He left that part out, conveniently. When the city council approved the training center funding anyway, the referendum effort was born. Cop City Vote organizers then spent months, here's a history lesson here, gathering 116,000 signatures. I was in the ballpark. In late 2023, in order to reach a required threshold of about half that number of verified registered voters, a coalition of voting rights and pro-democracy law firms across the United States drew up an ordinance to codify how the city could verify and counter vote signatures on petitions to place questions on ballots in general, and offered it to Atlanta City Council. This was needed because the Cop City referendum was the first such local democracy effort in the capital of Georgia's 176-year history, and no such process even existed, which is pretty alarming in and of itself. But in the end, the city council scuttled the ordinance behind closed doors, as The Guardian reported at that time. The referendum never took place, mired in legal disputes. Legal disputes that happened because the city decided to dispute the legality of the process in the first place, while the mayor himself was saying, yeah, let's put it to a vote. We're all for that. We're confident. Talking out of both sides of his mouth. If we had known and gotten these documents when we asked, there was a potential for immediate impact on public opinion, Matt Scott said from the Atlanta Community Press Collective, referring to the foundation's role in squashing the referendum. Also revealed in the document, the foundation posted 40 officers and installed 8 cameras at the training center's 171-acre footprint in a forest southeast of Atlanta in late 2023 to protect it from any vandalism by activists. Opposition to the $109 million center has come from a wide range of local and national organizations and protesters, and is centered on concerns such as unchecked police militarization and clearing forests in an era of climate crisis. That's a little glossing over sorts of the opposition, but nonetheless, this is The Guardian, and they're giving their global readership a taste of what was happening here in Atlanta. Atlanta police and the foundation say the center is needed for, quote, world-class training and to attract new officers. The last 8 pages of the document, zero in on this, the last 8 pages of the document included redacted emails, which appears to violate the judge's order to leave all records unredacted. Plaintiffs plan to file a motion to obtain those records. This is why local journalism matters. And by the way, the Atlanta Community Press Collective needs our support as well. They need that financial support. I'm going to give you the link to the Atlanta Community Press Collective at today's show notes, ronshowatl.com, so that if you feel so compelled, you can support their efforts as well. Last article, or last paragraph from the article at The Guardian. After receiving the document several weeks ago, ACPC has not waited to test the ruling and filed an open records request last week for minutes from the Foundation's board meetings going back to 2005. Woo! He is yet to receive a reply. We're going to keep going for transparency, he said. God bless him. God bless him. That's exactly what we need more of. In an era where 60 Minutes and CBS News is buckling at the knees, here you've got Matt Scott, the little old Atlanta Community Press Collective, out there doing the work. He's like our local ProPublica, who, by the way, is doing yeoman's work as well. You know what? I'll touch on that. We'll citizen journalism, right? I'll touch on ProPublica in just a few. It's The Ron Show. Thank you so much for listening. On America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast.
Follow The Ron Show on Facebook at The Ron Show Radio. The Ron Show on America One Radio.
So it's widely known now that most Americans receive their news through social media now. The days of getting the digest of the day's headlines from the nightly news broadcasts, CBS, ABC, NBC, those days are gone. And it's not that people aren't still watching those. It's more that by the time those broadcasts air, we already know a lot of those stories. We've already heard or seen at least the headline on social media to know the existence of that story. Nothing is going to gobsmack us. Nothing is going to shock us, surprise us, because we already know about it by the time David Buer or Tom Yamas, or I don't even know who the two-headed CBS, I haven't watched. And God, can I just tell you, the whole Stephen Colbert thing, first of all, really pisses me off. There's like almost no basis to it other than obviously placating you know who. I mean, there's just nothing to it. Ratings, he was the highest rated late night show. And if money was the problem, if the income or the revenue generation was the problem, and it's not Stephen Colbert's fault, right? Maybe look at your sales department. Why aren't you able to make hay with that? No, it's pretty easy to tell what this is about. Another capitulation. ABC News capitulated to Donald Trump and offered some money up because of the allegations of doctored video for a Kamala Harris interview. And by the way, anybody who's ever worked in inside a newsroom, inside a broadcast newsroom, knows that if you have broadcast standards where, you know, you have 60 minutes, you have 30 minutes or 90 minutes, however long your broadcast is, you got to fit things in for time. It wasn't a live interview. It was a taped interview, as most interviews are for political candidates like that, right? That was just, another one of those little broadcast and journalistic standards that was sort of widely well known in the first place by everybody, right? Who didn't know that? And how many times has Donald Trump himself sat down to do an interview with a Sean Hannity or a Laura Ingraham, and that interview was edited? Did Fox News get sued for that? Anyway, journalism is just, we're at a crossroads. I say that I'm not insisting I'm a journalist, citizen journalist or otherwise. I am a J school dropout. A little bio about me, though. When I was a kid, this is back in Grovetown, Georgia, and I think you can find this on the internet. I'm not sure. You know what? I have it on my WordPress. When I was, I want to say like 12, 13 years old, I used to produce a weekly newsletter in my hometown of Grovetown, the Grovetown Chronicle, and would sit out in front of the grocery store and sell copies of it and sell ads for it. Yeah, I mean, I was a little whippersnapper back then, man. I was ahead of my time, right? So I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to grow up and be a newspaper publisher. Glad I dodged that one, right? I mean, I got off the Lusitania and hopped on the Titanic, got into radio. Two of the dying entities of the 20th century. But I went to the University of Georgia thinking that's what I was going to do. I had a part-time job in high school, writing for the sports department at the Augusta Chronicle. Did a little bit of that for the Athens Banner Herald as well. And I want to say I wrote once or twice for the Red and Black, maybe. I'm not going to make that claim because I don't remember, but I do remember going into their office a few times, and I don't want to make a claim. But I wrote for several publications over the years, and while in college, spent way more time discovering myself. This is my coming out process, and also working a 35 hour a week job at a local grocery store chain there, working in the accounting, the customer servicing and accounting booth, and really didn't focus enough on school. So 2.5 years of blown tuition in, I dropped out because I had a radio job, and the radio job took me, again, on the 28-year career. You didn't come here for my biography, but I'm just letting you know why journalism is something that sort of, matters to me. And the institution is important, and why I think we should be paying attention to the quality, the state of journalism in the United States. And it's pretty troubling. But it's also quite heartening when we have folks like Matt Scott and the Atlanta Community Press Collective doing their work. George Cheedy, I've had George Cheedy on this show, half dozen times or so in the last 3 years, nearly 3 years. And he does important work at the Atlanta Objective. That's a fantastic Substack to follow. The folks at ProPublica on a national and international scale. And again, these all need your donations to stay afloat because they don't have sales departments. They don't have deep pockets. I mean, even at the corporate level, news coverage, journalism is sort of a loss leader. It's not something that makes money anymore. And what does make money is opinion generation. Fox News is popular because not of its news. It's popular because of its Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly over time, and Laura Ingraham and the primetime folk, the Jesse Waters. It's popular because it's an echo chamber. It's a confirmation bias conduit of sorts. Talk radio is profitable because, again, for the most part, it's just confirmation bias. Folks go to listen in to be confirmed what their innate biases or preconceptions. They go not to have them challenged. They certainly don't go to have them challenged because you see on social media, I do anyway, because I challenge MAGAs or conservatives all the time. When they're challenged, oh my God, they're like hissing possums. Back off! But the organic journalism mainframe is starting to flex its muscle, and we're going to need it. We're 1/8 of the way through this Trump presidency, and I feel as if we already know, just 6 months in, we can't count on NBC News or ABC News or CBS News, these stalwarts, to do the important work. It's curious that, again, we have two stories just in the last 2 weeks from the Rupert Murdoch-owned Wall Street Journal that are taking some swipes at Donald Trump and piling on with the Epstein story. And again, he has 5 weeks to languish in that. I have my theories about that. One of them being that the folks that he has surrounded himself with have actually just been using him as a vehicle for their ascendancy all along. Like, I tell people this all the time, off on the street and whatnot. Donald Trump doesn't scare me as much anymore as the henchman behind him. I almost think we're at this tipping point where he is just the useful idiot that has been the battering ram to get them inside our highest levels of governance so that they can do the damage that they will. There's a reason why when he has these signing sessions, right, at the Oval Office, at the Resolute desk, they're literally putting the bill in front of him and telling him what the bill is, and he's signing it. Because he's not as aware as they are, what they're putting before him. And when that tipping point is, when that 25th Amendment remedy comes. I mean, this Epstein stuff is coming from a lot of folks on the right, you know? Is that the canary in the coal mine? Is that the clue? Is that the smoke where there's fire? Anyway, back to the grassroots journalism thing. ProPublica has done some really important work on the detention of people in El Salvador who were just recently released. I'll share this in the show notes at ronshowatl.com as well. And you'll see at the top of the link that they're looking for donations because ProPublica is a donation-led journalistic effort. And that's just, if you want good journalism, that's the era you're headed to. We talked a little bit the last couple of days about listening to OANN or Newsmax or talk radio and the same sort of smarmy, patriotic, Christian nationalist, drippy stuff that, the advertising that pays for it. And we were talking about that with the Ponzi scheme and all that. That's the sort of stuff that, is driving them. And it's going to take organic and grassroots support to keep entities like ProPublica and the Atlanta Community Press Collective going and doing the important work that the larger corporate entities aren't doing. ProPublica writes, do I have a byline on this? I'm sure there is one, and we'll get to it, but it's kind of a swiping timeline thing for right now. On March 15th, President Donald Trump's administration sent more than 230 Venezuelan immigrants to a maximum security prison in El Salvador. El Salvador, not in Venezuela. Without providing evidence, Trump has called the men, quote, some of the most violent savages on the face of the earth. Last week, the men were released as suddenly as they'd been taken away. Now the truth of all their stories, one by one, will begin to be told. ProPublica writing, we obtained internal data showing the Trump administration knew that at least 197 of the men had not been convicted of crimes in the U.S. That is 197 out of 230 had not been convicted of crimes in the U.S., and that only 6 had been convicted of violent offenses. They write, we identified fewer than a dozen additional convictions, both for crimes committed in the U.S. and abroad, that were not reflected in the government data. Nearly half of the 230 men, or 118, actually that's more than half, were whisked out of the country while in the middle of their immigration cases. Oh, you've heard this, right? People show up to their immigration hearings and ICE is waiting for them. I mean, these are people trying to go about this the right way, man. And it doesn't pay to do this. It's the intimidation is the point. It's the message, the not so subtle message being sent to anybody who dares look similar to these Venezuelan men. Take the hint. Don't come here. We're going to make it miserable. Nearly half of the men, or 118, were whisked out of the country while in the middle of their immigration cases, which should have protected them from deportation. Some were only days away from a final hearing. At least 166 of the 230 men have tattoos. Interviews with families, immigration documents, and court records show the government relied heavily on tattoos to tie the men to the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, even though law enforcement experts told ProPublica that tattoos are not an indicator of gang membership. The men who were imprisoned range in age from 18 to 46. The impact of their months-long incarceration extended beyond them. Their wives struggled to pay the rent. Relatives went without medical treatment. Their children wondered if they would see them again. So this was some work done by, again, ProPublica, along with the Texas Tribune, Alianza Rebelde Investiga. I'm totally slaughtering that, I'm sure. And the Cazadores de Fake News. Is that really what it's called? The Cazadores de Fake? I don't know what that means. And a quick Google search tells me that means hunters. Okay, hunters of fake news. Oh, I like that. That's cool. Perhaps you remember the story, by the way, of the gay makeup artist who had been swept up in this Tren de Aragua scenario. He was one of those 230 men who had been detained illegally, who had recently been released. I'll give you a little bit of background on him in case you kind of forgot that story, and a little bit of that reuniting with his family members and friends. It was a very heartfelt and tear-laden reunion. We'll do that when the Ron Show returns. Thank you so much for listening on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. All right, final segment for today's and this week's Ron Show. I want to focus on two of the silliest, funniest things that have happened this week. One, by the way, being the Trey Parker, Matt Stone derived South Park episode. Season 27, by the way. They're right up there with Family Guy and The Simpsons when it comes to longevity. And I don't know what it is about biting satire and social commentary in cartoon form. I was such a fan of The Simpsons growing up and became a huge fan of Family Guy. And I don't know why I never really was drawn to South Park, but I do understand the genius of all three. And you can watch an episode as if you haven't watched one in years, and you've not missed anything because the characters don't age or anything like that. They all stay the same. It's very recurrent. And the commentary, the satire, it's still on point. Kudos to all three of those entities that just pick up right where they left. By the way, there is a new King of the Hill rebooting. I believe it's on Hulu. And it looks fantastic as well. Same people. The South Park honchos oversee that as well. It looks incredible. Okay, so now that episode is hilarious. The only thing I'm upset about that episode is AI is the devil. I never wanted to see Donald Trump naked. I certainly never want to see the phallus of Donald Trump. And I don't know who they got their information from. Maybe they reached out to Stormy Daniels and said, "Can you describe in great detail what?" Just prepare yourself. If you haven't seen this episode yet, you're going to see what appears to be Donald Trump stark naked in the desert with his appendage. And by the way, his appendage has a speaking role. Go figure. It's hilarious. And that it's on Paramount is it's even more delicious. Paramount, of course, letting the Stephen Colbert Show go, canceling it, the entire franchise. Of course, we know that the Paramount sale to Skydance is happening, and the FCC has to sign off on that, and so naturally they're bootlicking for Trump officials. But in the meanwhile, Jon Stewart teed off on The Daily Show Monday, and we haven't heard word of him being let go yet or The Daily Show being canceled yet. And they just signed a $1.5 billion agreement with the creators of South Park for 50 new episodes and, of course, streaming rights, et cetera, and so on. And so what's going to happen there? Interesting stuff, right? Paramount's in a bit of a bind, I guess you could say. But no, to me, the funniest thing that happened this week is this setup, right? Donald Trump thought he was going to set up Jerome Powell. They were going to tour the Fed facility. He's been making noise about how expensive the cost overruns are at the Fed buildings renovations. By the way, a lot of these cost overruns coming because of items that the Trump administration, prior Trump administration, asked for in the first place. Yeah, they leave that part out. They always leave a little part out, don't they? Anyway, Donald Trump thought he was going to have this little public spectacle while, wearing the hard hat and walking around the building. He literally had a gotcha item in his jacket pocket. He was going to pull out and catch Jerome Powell with the cameras rolling. Fox News was airing it live and everything. Here's how it went down.
The reason why I wanted to see it was the overruns of the expenses. Wanted to figure out why.
Senator Tim Scott.
Yeah. So we're taking a look, and it looks like it's about $3.1 billion. It went up a little bit, or a lot. So
Jerome
the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed.
There's a paper out of his jacket.
It just came out.
It's right here, buddy. See, right here. Here's the receipts.
Our notes had it about 3.1 as well.
And then Tim Scott chimes in. Another,
Came from us.
just
Yes.
looks like a clown in this.
I don't know who does that.
Now, you're including the Martin renovation. You just added.
our entire capital.
Yeah, you just added in a third building. Is what that is. That's a third building.
Well,
including
no,
the
but
Martin building.
it's a building that's being built.
No.
No, it was built 5 years ago.
5 years
we
ago.
We finished Martin 5 years ago.
Part of the overall work.
But it's not new.
So we're going to take a look. We're going to see what's happening, and it's got a long way. Do you expect any more additional cost overruns?
Don't expect them. we're ready for them. But we have a little bit of a reserve that we may use, but no, we don't.
So let's review. Donald Trump showed up with receipts. I got the receipts in my jacket pocket right here. And Tim Scott right beside me, who, by the way, wasn't wearing a hard hat while the other two were. Okay. So he thought he had this whole setup, right? I got the receipts in my jacket. Dude, first of all, you don't show up to the Fed to argue numbers, dollars and cents, with Jerome Powell. He is like the guru, the Maharishi. He is the man when it comes to monetary policy. He knows to the penny what those renovations are costing. But let's also review the numbers that he came in with, that Trump came in with, the inflated numbers, the $400 million additional cost, came from 5 years ago, a building that was completed 5 years ago. I'm trying to remember, let's see, back in 2020, if it was 5 years ago, who was president then? Oh, that's right. The guy with the receipts, the guy who thought he had the gotcha. And Tim Scott, by the way, was a senator back then, too. You'd think these two morons would actually remember that kind of shit. Nope. But boy, they sure showed up with that gotcha material, ready to just hound Jerome Powell about the cost overruns at the Fed. That's been a little, topic of conversation within MAGA culture of like anything to distract us from the Epstein files and how awful that all looks for not just Trump, but for his, cover-uppers as well. I mean, y'all, that's funnier than the South Park episode, if you ask me. It just is. Actually, there's a little bit more. Let me continue playing here.
Expect to be finished in 2027. We're well along, as you can see.
Now the hard hat comes off.
Nice to take these off every once in a while when we're not under too much danger.
Change of subject.
So, any questions?
Mr. President, does the issue give you any? As a real estate developer, what would you do with a project manager who would be over budget?
Generally speaking, what would I do? I'd fire him.
Do you think this issue, Mr. President, gives you cause to do that?
Well, I'm here just really with the chairman. He's showing us around, showing us the work. And so I don't want to get that. I don't want to be personal. I just would like to see it get finished. And in many ways, it's too bad it started. But it did start. And
under his watch.
It's been under construction for a long time.
Began under his presidency.
Be a real long time. Because it looks like it's got a long way to go.
Okay, but how about the female reporter, by the way, setting up the gotcha softball question? You used to be a real estate developer, Mr. Trump. You were so excellent at that. 6 bankruptcies, 4 companies. You were so excellent a business person. What would you do if you were, still a real estate developer and you had cost overruns like that? Softball, I'd fire him. Yeah, remember, I was the reality TV show host who got to say, you're fired every week for like 26 weeks for like how many seasons? It made me a star. It made you the facade of the, air quotes, business success that your rubes who keep voting for you think that you are clearly not, because you can't keep up with simple shit like when building construction began, when building construction finished, when the costs were accrued, and then you show up with paperwork in your jacket pocket thinking you have a gotcha. You're gonna get Jerome Powell this one time. And then you come to find out the shit you brought wasn't the right shit for the gotcha. In fact, you got gotcha'd. And you brought Senator Tim Scott to get gotcha'd with you. I mean, sometimes 2 birds, 1 stone, it's a beautiful thing. I'm sorry. That to me is like, it's funnier than the South Park episode. And don't get me wrong, the South Park episode is hilarious. It's chef's kiss. But this little quip right here, Donald Trump thinking he was going to have his signature moment this week that was going to distract us all from the Epstein files. Sorry, buddy. You got like 4.5 more weeks of that to deal with, thanks to Speaker Johnson tucking tail and running off with the House for 5 weeks. Yeah, no, that's not going away anytime soon. Oh, and by the way, how about the interviewing of Ghislaine Maxwell for 6 hours yesterday? What do you think they were trying to get out of her there? It's all going to be fun to watch over the next few weeks. That is going to do it for today's and this week's Ron Show. Thank you so much for listening. 9 a.m., 5 p.m. weekdays on America One Radio. 11 p.m. weekdays, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Saturdays and Sundays, 10 a.m. at Progressive Voices as well. Show notes as always at RonShowATL.com. Take care. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.